Mr. Doyle, wasn't our deal just about money? How could you break your promise? As he witnessed his sister get drugged, James immediately panicked. Even a fool would know what was going to happen next. What's the matter? You want to avenge your sister? Duncan laughed wickedly. Sure, if you chop off your other hand, then I'll let your sister go. How does that sound? James' expression stiffened, and he immediately hung his head. His gaze flitted around as he dared not look at Dahlia, who was lying out cold on the floor. A coward, just as I thought. Get lost. Duncan shouted, and he kicked James to the floor. Okay. I'll get lost right away. James looked as if he had just been spared a gruesome death. He dared not hesitate and scrambled out of the room instantly. His pathetic behavior made the whole gang laugh loudly. Okay, you guys get out too. Don't disturb me. Duncan waved his hand and dismissed his lackeys from the room. Then, a thought struck him, and he fished out Dahlia's phone. He called Dustin and said, Hey, Rhys. Do you know who I am? That's right, it's me, Duncan Doyle. Your woman is in my bed right now. I'll show her a good time tonight. The moment he finished speaking, a loud bang sounded as someone kicked the door open. Then, a figure with a cold expression came into sight. You'll show who a good time. Dustin stepped through the door, his gaze terrifyingly cold. From the moment he saw Dahlia's text, he knew something was wrong, so he rushed here as fast as he could. What are you doing here? Duncan's eyes widened, and he staggered backward in fear. Didn't you call me to ask me to come over? Well, now I'm here. What are you going to do? Dustin began approaching him. Someone, come quick. Duncan screamed. However, strangely enough, no one outside responded. It was as though those men stationed outside had disappeared into thin air. Where the fuck are you all? Hello. Duncan continued hollering, but no matter how much he yelled, there was no response. I warned you before not to cross me again. Or else, you'll die a miserable death. What, did you think I was bullshitting you? Dustin was getting closer and closer. Rhys, you're on my territory. I'm warning you to not come any closer, or you won't step out of this place ever again, Duncan shouted, putting on a fierce front. Tell me, how do you want to die? Dustin asked coldly. Take another step, and I'll blow your brains out. At that moment, Duncan suddenly took a gun from the drawer and pointed it right at Dustin's head. Now that Duncan had a weapon with him, he believed that he had the upper hand. Really? You can try. Dustin continued to approach Duncan without a hint of fear. You're fucking asking for it. Duncan pulled the trigger without a second thought. Bang! There was the sound of a shot being fired. Yet, Dustin was still standing in the same spot and did not move a single inch. He was completely unharmed from head to toe. I missed. Duncan frowned. He pulled the trigger 2 more times. Yet, it was the same as before. However, Dustin still looked unruffled and unhurt in the slightest. Fuck, I refuse to believe that I can't kill you. Duncan clenched his jaw and began to shoot madly until there were no more bullets left. Bang, bang, bang. After a series of gunshots, Dustin was still standing in the same spot. His body was uninjured. Heck, even his clothes weren't damaged. Is this guy a ghost? Duncan was so scared that cold sweat began to pour from his temples. At this distance, there was no way Duncan would miss, even if he closed his eyes. Yet, he'd fired over a dozen bullets, but he didn't so much as leave a scratch on Dustin. It was absolutely insane. Were you trying to kill me with these things? Dustin slowly opened his fist to reveal a handful of misshapen bullets in his palm. How did you do that? Duncan's expression turned into one of horror. Could it be that his opponent had caught all the bullets that he'd shot earlier with his bare hand? Was he even fucking human? Do you want to know? I'll tell you once you're dead with that. Dustin kicked Duncan in the stomach. Duncan flew backward like a bullet leaving the barrel. He slammed into the wall harshly, leaving a spider crack on the wall. Blood spurted from his nose and mouth on impact. I am a member of the Doyle family, one of the fabulous 5. If you dare lay a hand on me, my family will never forgive you. Duncan threatened, his face twisting into a ferocious snarl. Dustin hummed before giving him another kick in the chest. There was the sound of bones cracking, and Duncan once again coughed up a mouthful of blood. His entire ribcage collapsed on itself. "Don't kill me. I'm begging you not to kill me. I know I was wrong. I'll never do it again. I swear, I won't annoy you ever again," Duncan begged in between fits of coughing up blood. This time, he was truly afraid. "Any last words?" Dustin slowly raised his foot. This time, he lifted it right over Duncan's head. "Wait. Someone intentionally wanted to make you suffer today. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just the runner." "Who was it?" Dustin asked coolly. "If you promise not to kill me, I'll tell you the truth," Duncan said, attempting to negotiate terms. "No thanks. You can just go die." As soon as Dustin finished speaking, he stomped his foot hard on Duncan's head. "No." Duncan tried to wail before his head exploded into pieces. And just like that, he was dead. "Mr. Rhys, the people outside have been taken care of." At that moment, 2 masked martial artists dressed in black garments walked in. They were elite shadow guards. "Excellent. Clean this place up, and send the body straight to the Doyle home," Dustin ordered. The 2 exchanged glances, but in the end, they still nodded. "Yes." Dustin said nothing more. He carried the unconscious Dahlia and briskly walked out of the underground casino. The moment he stepped out the doors, he noticed a suspicious figure lurking in a corner. It was none other than James, who had managed to escape earlier. "Come out." Dustin threw a glance over his shoulder. "Oh, it's just you. You scared me." James couldn't help but let out a breath of relief when he saw Dustin's face. At the same time, he began to criticize him. "Hey, Rhys, why didn't you come earlier? Don't you know how much danger my sister was in just now? Also, if you weren't so slow to come to the rescue, my hand wouldn't have been chopped off. How are you going to compensate me? I'm telling you, without at least $18 million, I won't dash." Before he could finish his sentence, Dustin had already raised his hand and slapped him hard across the face. James stumbled backward from the impact, almost falling over. His cheek began to swell rapidly. "Are you crazy? What did you hit me for?" James cupped his stinging cheek, his entire body radiating shock and fury. "That was for your insolent remarks." With a cold face, Dustin raised his hand and gave him another slap. "This one is for your lack of repentance." Slap. "This one is for your cowardice." Slap. "And this one is for throwing Dahlia under the bus." Each slap made a loud ringing sound as it landed on James' face. He was smacked so hard that his head began to spin, and blood began to drip from his nose and mouth. His face was so swollen that he now looked like a pig. "Stop." Suddenly, an SUV pulled over to the side of the road, and Florence immediately jumped off the car and dashed over. "Mom, you're finally here." When James saw his mother, he immediately ran into her arms, crying. He wailed, "That bastard Dustin is crazy. Look at what he did to my face. Rhys, why did you hit my son?" Florence flew into a rage. "Why don't you ask him what he did?" Dustin shouted back. "No matter what, you can't hit my son," Florence screamed, glaring at Dustin. "That's right. Hitting people is wrong. Not to mention, why did you have to beat him so terribly?" Julie added. "Terribly? He should be grateful that I didn't slaughter him," Dustin roared with a frigid look. If James hadn't gotten into trouble in the first place, Dahlia wouldn't have gotten dragged down with him. Even more despicably, that bastard had abandoned his sister and ran for his life alone. "James, what in the world happened? Tell me everything, and I'll make sure to do right by you," Florence demanded, her face darkening. "Mom, this is all because of Dustin." James pointed his finger at Dustin, getting his side of the story out first. "He colluded with the owner of the casino to punish me and put me in a crushing gambling debt. Then, he even lied to Dahlia to get her here, drugged her, and was going to do something to her. I couldn't bear to watch her get hurt, so I risked my safety and tried to stop him. Humiliated, that asshole blew his top and beat me into a pulp. Look at my face, look at what he did to me." As soon as James finished speaking, Dustin's face instantly turned stormy.